Welcome to Inspiring Nations with Sonia Keeve podcast show. Question: where do you draw your inspiration? Join us as we feature women across the globe with incredible stories of how they inspire nations every day. Now, here is your host, Sonia Keeve.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another amazing edition of Inspiring Nations. I am your host, Sonia Keeve, and today we have a special guest. We have our first gentleman guest here on Inspiring Nations, and I want to introduce him to my listening audience. Milton Lawrence Jr. is an international lifestyle wedding photographer, filmmaker, and executive producer of the newly anticipated docu-series called Will You Marry Me? It is widely gaining notoriety as the go-to storyteller for brides and influencers both nationally and abroad. His decade of experience has positioned him to be the go authority in getting strategic and tactical results through digital and visual storytelling. Inspired by the Black Love docu-series, Milton's most recent creation, the Will You Marry Me Facebook docu-series, has added a unique and very important voice to the wedding conversation. And I just want to share that his first season docu-series reviewed raving reviews, and it was watched over 350,000 times during its pilot season. And so without further ado, I want to welcome to my show Mr. Milton Lawrence. Thank you so much for joining. Hello, superstar.
Thank you so much for having me, Sonia. Crazy excited to be here.
I am super excited, as you can tell, because you are truly our first gentleman series, our first gentleman guest on the show. And so for those who really don't know you, because I've been following you and following your series, but share just a little bit outside of your bio, who you are and who you serve.
So, father of three girls, and brand new grandfather. Originally from Baltimore, father's from Trinidad. Mother's side of the family is from the Carolinas.
Okay.
Served 8 years in the Marine Corps. Coming out of high school, because my oldest daughter was on the way. And when I transitioned from out of the military, my sister called and said my mother wasn't doing too well, and so I transitioned from the West Coast back to the East Coast, back to Baltimore, where I'm originally from.
Okay.
And got into photography. I was between jobs. I worked as a defense contractor in project management and that type of thing.
Okay.
And the long and short of it is, like I said, my sister called and said mommy wasn't doing too well, and so I became a full-time caretaker. My mother moved in with me, and and I started shooting in nightclubs as a photographer.
Oh, wow.
And so I was your picture man. You see the guy with the backdrop and that type of thing. So this is 10 years ago. So it's 2008, 2009 time frame. And that's right around the time when the cell phone cameras in cell phones started to get better.
Yeah.
That is also around the same time that Kim Kardashian hit the scene, and she introduced the selfie.
Yes.
And so, where my initial idea was to go into the nightclubs and start shooting to make $5 a picture. That was the goal, right? Just to make ends meet. I quickly realized that I couldn't compete with the selfie, because a digital picture that you can keep on your cell phone versus paying somebody $5 for it quickly became very, very outdated, and we kind of went on from there.
Wow. I mean, your experience, first of all, is amazing. And I definitely want to say thank you so much for your service to this country.
Thank you.
And, I really want to get into our topic today, which is leading ladies in love. And this whole docu-series, like I was introduced to it. I attended a conference, the BCon conference. And you had shown season 2 of Will You Marry Me? And I have to say, I was blown away, because I was one of the millions of raving fans of the show Black Love. But what I'd like to know, because I can tell that was your inspiration, but what made you go from photographer to creating this docu-series?
So it's a natural progression, right? And so I was recently talking to, I do some mentoring as well with young boys. And I was talking about my father, and I didn't realize, when I looked at his life, how much how whenever he would put his hand to something, whether it was DJing or playing cards or whatever the case may be, he just wanted to be the best at it, right? And it was just something he did. Something I just saw. He never said it out of his mouth. He just wanted to be the best at it. So that's kind of the precursor to letting you know that as a photographer, there's levels, right? There's levels to everything. There's levels to radio. There's levels to photography. And so I started in the nightclubs, and I quickly realized after shooting my first wedding 6 months in that that I really fell in love with weddings. And so, you know, because my personality is one, I love to dance, I love to have a good time, I love to eat good food, and you get to do all that and get paid to do it. This is a no-brainer, right?
Right.
So fast forward now, anyone who's done weddings, so again, started out in nightclubs, started shooting weddings. Fast forward now, I'm now shooting weddings, you know, nationally, you know, throughout the United States. That, you know, now working with a bunch of, you know, wedding magazines, that led me to start shooting weddings internationally. Anyone who's ever done weddings at a high level know that it's very taxing on the body, right? And the natural progression from, you know, being the top of your game in photography, clients will start to ask for video.
Right.
And so initially I used to outsource the video. I would just find, you know, cinematographers to come in to capture, and I would just watch them. I'm all self-taught. I never went to school for photography. I just learned it on my own.
Right.
And I did it by learning it from the best people that was willing to teach. And so that then transitioned into looking at some of the stories that were on TV. I've seen a lot of ratchet on TV.
Yes.
And then what happened was you have two major dynamics happening at the exact same time. The barrier of entry to photography and video production has lowered, because now you have digital photography equipment that's now shooting TV quality, and the distribution model for TV has changed. Now, because of the internet, I can take my product and go direct to the client versus having to go through a traditional distribution model. Right. So with those two things happening at the same time, all I needed was a story.
Yeah. Right.
And so I this was probably August of 2017. I'm on my way back from a small city in Alabama called Atmore, Alabama. So I'm passing through Pensacola, and you know how they have the CNN and they have a TV show on at the airport. And so I see the first commercial for Black Love. And so that intrigued me. And then I go online, and I realize that this is simply two cameras and two people sitting in front of a camera on their couch. And so I am used to producing, you know, multi-camera productions with these weddings, multiple events happening at the same time, and all of this has to be, you know, synthesized, put together, and positioned so that, you know, it can be retrieved. I mean, it can be taken in. Right. And so when I saw how simple it was, I said, okay. I had this idea for a show a long time ago, and it had been sitting on the shelf, right? And I'm not sure if you've ever seen an instantiation of your idea, or somebody do something close to an idea that you had. That's what happened, right? And when I saw Black Love, I said, all right, that's it. Yeah. And so the original name of the show was called Boyfriend to Groom. And so what I saw what was missing, again, like I said, I mentioned there was a lot of ratchet TV out there. And it's a need for it. Don't get me wrong. There's no shade to that style of production. It's a need for it. But what was missing, and I think, you know, we're entrepreneurs and people that are looking to do something different. What's missing, and what I found what was missing was there was no real substance. You know, since the Cosby Show and some of these other shows that were out, there was no real substance. And so I wanted to put something out there and answer the question that hasn't been asked, and that is, you see Bridezilla, you see shows like Say Yes to the Dress, and many other wedding shows that are out there. But the reality of it is, nothing that ever happens until he says, "Will you marry me?" And so, if you could and as a man, and as someone that is married and that type of thing, I sit in the barbershops, I go to the cigar lounges, and, you know, to the golf courses and things like that. And if women can be a fly on the wall and hear some of the conversations that we have, I think some of their perspectives would change. Thus, you know, coming up with the show, Will You Marry Me? And so the whole premise of the show is based around two thought processes. One, a man has two defining moments. One, when he decides to make you his girl, and the second of which when he decides to make you his wife.
Yes.
And so that conversation is never shared with you. It's always shared with his homeboy or his father or whatever male figure that he, or he just knows it intuitively and he never shares it at all.
Yeah.
And so what we found with the first pilot season is that a lot of women are saying this is giving them hope. Wow, I never knew. And it's starting a conversation inside the household that's like second to none.
Yes.
So as important as him proposing to you, the defining moment has been added to that level of importance of knowing, because women absolutely melt when they find out the true reason that he decided to make you his wife.
Amen. And you are truly speaking truth about that. And I want to applaud you for being the person to pioneer that conversation, especially in a time where the question and the conversations we're hearing is, why aren't people getting married or staying married, or why they're not in relationships anymore? And it's because we're not seeing ourselves, for those that are married, on television anymore. We're not seeing that. And so your docu-series really opens that up, because I will tell you, when I saw the screening of season 2, and I think the couple was Takora and Tyrone.
And Tyrone Davis, yep.
Okay, I'm glad I got the names right.
Yeah, Takora and Tyrone Davis, yeah.
And watching that dynamic, I remember that feeling. I remember, because I believe my husband and I are probably a little bit older than they are, but but listening to them, it reminded me when he was courting me in college. And I had those same feelings. And I remember just saying, babe, you gotta hear about this docu-series. I mean, it sounded like you and I when we were that age. And so I find that more people will really hold on to that and really attach to that, because the message is what we need to hear today. And so this idea of leading ladies in love, what is that all about for you?
So there's the other half of the conversation. My initial idea was an idea called the fairytale divorce. One of the conversations that men have all the time, that again is never shared, with women, is that a lot of women, there's this term called broken. There's this term, and it's I don't know if it's a marketing term. It's a real thing, right? It's a great way to explain when something doesn't feel whole. Right. And so one part of the conversation that I wanted to create, it was very intentional, was what you initially talked about, which is, seeing families. It's a beautiful thing, right? But on the other side, you talk about leading ladies, starting the conversation from a man's perspective on, if he never says, if this point of validation, having to get validation from a man. And what I mean by that, and again, hopefully I won't be dismissed or looked at differently. I want to start a conversation that will get people thinking, or get specifically women thinking. I have 3 daughters, so I have to let them know. In today's economy, a lot of our men are locked up. A lot of the men are not in a position to be able to be providers for you, right? So I need you not to put your validation of who you are and if you're lovable based on him saying, if you're not married, or if you're not engaged, or if you're not in a relationship. Let's talk. Okay. Both conversations are come from, will you marry me? Both conversations do.
Right.
You do not, in my opinion, if you're going to be a leading lady, I believe that, and you want to be in a relationship, I have found more times than not, because I've literally interviewed over 1,000 women.
Right.
I found that a lot of women who want to be in a relationship, the second they decide to stop trying to be in a relationship and and love themselves and go do what it is that they love to do. If you love to cook, if you love to travel, if you love education, if you go do those things while you're in the pursuit of just loving on yourself and being the best of you, that is something that's very attractive to us as men.
Yes.
And so that conversation, both conversations of, yes, it's a beautiful thing to have defining moments and those type of things. But in addition to that, let's talk about, you're not less than if your girlfriend gets engaged and you don't.
Yes.
You're not less than. As a matter of fact, you're just as whole. You're not broken. Maybe you had some bad experiences in the past. It's okay.
Yes.
If you make it your business to go out and go just be the best you, I promise you're going to have more, you're going to get more attention than you can shake a stick at, in my opinion, because you're out there doing what you do. You're doing what fulfills you as a human being.
Yes. And that is so important, because I've learned in my own experiences, and also with the experience of my listeners, when you come into a marriage, the successful marriages are those where each person comes into the relationship whole.
Facts.
Because in your wedding vows, it talks about the two become one. It's not you bringing just half of you and half of him to bring a whole person. It's about bringing the whole individual. And it starts with that whole premise of loving you. And I just talked about this with another guest on another show about when you can truly love yourself, there's this joy that comes from that, and you attract who you are, right?
Fact. That's so true. So true. I agree with you.
And so this leading ladies, I'm glad that you said that, because because I think love comes when you have this happiness and you have this joy. And again, you attract the type of mate that you want. And so I think what happens though, you come into that relationship and, I think many of us, especially in the church, get confused with this whole submission, and submitting, right? And they think that submission means leveling yourself down. But it's not that. It's just about a level of honor and reverence, of respect for each other.
I personally believe that when it comes to submission, it's a form of maturity and power.
Yes.
And in order to be able to submit, you have to know your strengths and your weaknesses.
Yes.
One of the questions that we ask in season 2, and I really focused on, I didn't really ask it in season 1, but we really did focus it on season 2, was filling buckets. And so you can come into, both people can come into a relationship whole, but there are certain things that, and if you want to get an inside peek of what men are thinking leading up to asking you the defining moments, one of the reoccurring things that guys say is that she would do things for me, okay, and we also explore the same sex world as well.
Yes.
She did something for me that I naturally could not do for myself, and I never asked them to do it for me. It was like they filled my bucket without me having to ask for it.
Ooh, yeah.
So we have natural weaknesses. It's not even a weakness. It's just something that, we don't do well, right? Some people are not good with finances. Some people are not good with, intimacy or touch and things like that. And so with regards to submission, I think when we come into this relationship, we come in knowing our strengths, sometimes knowing our weaknesses, and when we see that bucket being filled because of our weakness, it's a surrendering. It's a surrendering of okay, I can surrender myself to you from a man's perspective. I can surrender myself to you, and I can give that part of my life to you, and I don't have to worry about it.
Ooh.
If that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. And for my listening audience, I don't know about y'all, but I know I'm over here high-fiving because Mr. Milton is on point with that. And so with the whole docu-series, like, how did you select the cities and the guests that you would have for your show?
So I wanted to take it back to the heritage of being a wedding photographer. I think, the wedding professionals as a whole don't really get the credit that they deserve.
Yes.
And so I wanted to leverage the fact that I am an international lifestyle wedding photographer. I still shoot weddings. So if you're married, if you're getting married and you need a wedding photographer, I'm not cheap, but we do quality work,
right,
and that type of thing. So what we did was the initial story. It was less about the couples and more about the story.
Mm.
Okay, it was less about, we met at church or we met here, we met there. It was about, is your story unique?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to tell a redundant story,
Yeah.
right? And so, so what we looked at was stories that were, again, that they were unique out in the marketplace. Example being, they met on Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm.
Couples that had never seen each other before, and they what we found, a lot of older couples were, not say older, meaning they met maybe in their 40s and 50s and things like that.
Right.
And their courting process wasn't years. It was literally months because they knew what they wanted, right? So telling that story, telling the unique story of a father, a couple where she came into the relationship, and we talked about coming into relationships whole or broken, with her father, the impact of her father disowning her. Because of her Nigerian culture, how that impacted, their relationship. Yes. So again, it was less about the couples, and it was it was more about the unique stories. And then there's the added ingredient of asking the right questions to pull out the right answers to get what we're looking for.
And that is what makes your docu-series different than Black Love, because we see these celebrity couples and we're intrigued by it and we think, oh, that's such a sweet story, but there's some authenticity that comes with what you're bringing to the marketplace, because it's like I said earlier, I saw myself in Takora and Tyrone, and I know there are other, and I know friends who have experienced some of the same type of experiences, some of your couples you've interviewed and were part of your series. And so I think that relatable factor makes it even more unique, in my opinion, of how we can watch it and then go, and then after we watch it, have that conversation.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that, to complement what you're saying, getting men to talk is a phenomenon in and of itself.
Yes, it is.
Right. And so one of the worst things that men would hear from our significant others is, babe, we need to talk. Right.
Like what I did.
Right. Right. Babe, we need to talk. Right. And the reason why that's a cringing thing for us is because you're not talking in the first place. Right. And so there's not that ongoing dialogue. And so because, we've stopped pillow talking, right? We've stopped, talking like you used to talk back in the day, early on when you were courting and things like that. You stopped dating altogether, right? And so will you marry me? It's not about will you marry me one time. It's literally will you marry me over and over and over and over again.
Yes.
Right. And so I want to take you back. So if the show doesn't do anything else, I want the show to take you back to when you first got started and remember what it was that it was like when you were dating and you were courting with one another. And let's get that popping again, and that type of thing.
Yes. And that's so important because it's so easy to get comfortable that you get complacent.
Facts.
And you forget, why did you do what you do to get that gentleman or do to get that lady? And it's funny, I hear people have the conversation, especially with guys, that they'll say, I remember, my lady would, wear really nice clothes or sexy lingerie to impress me. Now she's coming to bed with the do-rag and the t-shirt and shorts.
Exactly. It is so true. So that's one of the questions that we ask, Sandra. We ask that question. Is there one piece of clothing that your significant other wears that you could absolutely throw away? And surprisingly enough, it's always either, they'll never say like underwear or anything like that, but they'll say that like a t-shirt or, or something. It got to go. It got to, but you would have never worn that. No. During the courting process. You bring your best self to the table.
Yes, you do.
So after watching the show, that's what I want people to do. Bring your best self back to the table. You know what I mean? And here's what's funny. We're getting inboxes from women saying that I've had to go and apologize. Guys are coming in saying, I had to go in. I didn't know she felt that way.
Wow.
You know, well, I didn't know he felt that way. You know, here's the thing. Here's how men have typically done it. We drop hints, right?
Yeah.
Babe, yeah. So yeah, that shirt, right? So it's nice, but you look beautiful. Now the butt, that's a very loaded butt, right? And so, and he would probably never say, "No, I don't like it." Now, I just really just need you to take that off. Don't do that. Because we love you. We don't want to offend you, right? And that type of thing. But sometimes, and after talking to the marriage mentors, there are a couple, Michelle and what is the husband's name? Here's what they would basically tell them: you need to be direct.
Yes.
You need to be direct. We as couples need to be direct and start getting naked with one another and start telling the truth, right? And on how we feel, right? Absolutely. And that type of thing. And then lastly, I'll say this: Pastor John, what is John's last name? It'll come to me. Here's what he said, and it'll come back to me. He said this, and I thought it was extremely important. He said that, you know, in his marriage, he and his wife go to counseling every month, and there's nothing wrong. And so what he says, he learned this from Joel Osteen, right?
Oh,
he said that John Gray said that. He said he and his wife, they go to counseling every month because as prophetic as he is, he sees everybody else's issues, but he doesn't see his own. And what I want Will You Marry Me and Will You Marry Me Lounge and the entire ecosystem of Will You Marry Me to be is to be that spiritual / non-spiritual counseling place where you can go and be honest with one another, to hear different stories on how conflict resolution, how to deal with blended families, finances, all the things, the taboo topics that nobody wants to talk about.
Absolutely.
And if we're going to keep our relationships together, we're going to have those conversations.
Amen. And so I have to ask, is there going to be a season 3? And if so, how can folks get, on the show or information about it?
So yes, absolutely. There will be a season 3. I see Will You Marry Me as, being in multiple languages around the world. I see it, designed for different groups of couples. So as an example, we've gotten a request from the LGBTQ family to just do one just for them, because their stories, although love is love, what they're dealing with families and biases and things like that. Yes. We're going to have that just for them. Okay. Right. And that way it can answer a lot of questions for the heterosexual community how do they do this? Right. And how do they do that? And it's a conversation we just need to have. So for those who would like to learn more about the casting process and sharing their stories and things like that, I encourage you to join the lounge, the Will You Marry Me Lounge. It's willyoumarrymelounge.com. Again, that's www.willyoumarrymelounge.com. And so this is where actually you can see each of the episodes. Each episode is up for 72 hours, and then we take it down. Okay. We do have a pre-sale that's happening that actually goes, it'll actually go live in the next week or so. Okay. And so people that are inside the lounge will get a chance to see it. We were testing out putting it on the fan page and also putting it inside the lounge. But for now, we're just putting it inside the lounge for people to take a look at it. It'll be up for 72 hours. It comes out every Sunday at 7 p.m. You can take a look at it there. And on Wednesdays, we take it down, for the next episode. And so this week, we're going into episode number 3 for Will You Marry Me? And if you're in the Baltimore area, we have a screening in Baltimore. In August, we'll have a screening in Atlanta. In September, we have a screening in Greenville, North Carolina. And we're adding on more screenings, as we go forward. So when the casting process comes out for season 3, you need to be in the lounge to find out about it.
Well, there you have it. Make sure that you are tapping into the Will You Marry Me Lounge on Facebook for more information about the casting process. And Milton, before I let you go, this is something I love to do with all of my guests. I'm going to give you 3 words, and I want you to tell me what comes to mind when you hear them. The first word is faith.
Blind action.
Why do you say that?
It's like going up a mountain and you can't. I was in the Marine Corps, and we would take these force marches, and the only thing you could see was so dark sometimes you couldn't see in front of you. So it's blind action. You don't know what's in front of you. You just there's a subtle gut feeling on the inside of it that the only you know, and you just it's like it's blind action. You can't see it. Substance of things hoped for, but evidence of things not seen. So it's blind action.
The next word is love.
Action.
Inspiration.
It's a verb.
Inspiration.
Rubber band.
And why do you say that?
Once a rubber band is stretched, it never goes back to its original state. And every time you stretch that rubber band, any and everything that you're ever going to do in life is going to require some type of inspiration. And then every time you step into the next level, you're creating a vacuum for others. So you're inspiring them as you're making moves. That's how I see it.
Well, Mr. Milton Lawrence, it was truly an honor to have you as our first gentleman guest on Inspiring Nations.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
And this is another edition of Inspiring Nations with Sonia Keeve. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Inspiring Nations with Sonia Keeve. I challenge each of you to perform one simple act of kindness and pass it forward. For more information on how you can be a guest on our show, visit www.soniakeeve.com. We hope to see you next time.